If you only know Smith & Wollensky Steakhouse from The Devil Wears Prada, you've got a lot to learn about this upscale eatery. We've got all the info about its name, its founders, the steak, and more. When Smith & Wollensky first opened in 1977, steakhouses were known for being decidedly male-centric, with traditionally masculine decorations like dark leather, plenty of brown liquor on the menu, and big, manly steaks. Furthermore, when Alan Stillman acquired the building that would become his world-famous restaurant, he had to do a complete remodel due to some pretty serious previous fire damage. The atmosphere of Smith & Wollensky became sophisticated and warm, without losing the masculine edge most steakhouses at the time needed to succeed. The target demographic at the time was, after all, the most masculine of carnivorous men. Stillman told Edible Geography, "It had more comfort to it, but that wasn't because we intended it to be woman-friendly. It was a steakhouse, and at the time, steakhouses were male-oriented. Our target customer was people who ate at the Palm, men my age." It would be reasonable to assume that the founders of Smith & Wollensky were, well, a pair of guys named Smith & Wollensky, right? But that's not quite accurate. The owner and founder of the famous steakhouse is actually Alan Stillman, and, try as you might, there's no actual Smith or Wollensky to be found.
No Smith, no Wollensky.
According to CBS News, Stillman waited until the last minute to name his restaurant. He already had many wealthy investors who had contributed to his vision, but just 2 or 3 weeks before the grand opening, he still didn't have a name. It finally came to him and his associates in the wee hours of the morning.
And we finally said, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, get a phone book.
Stillman told CBS he randomly flipped to a page and chose the name Smith from the list. His friends encouraged him not to call his restaurant something as terribly basic as Smith, so Stillman flipped to another page and got Wollensky. The cadence of the two names together caught his ear, and, surprisingly enough, the name stuck. In 1965, Alan Stillman borrowed $5,000 from his mother to open one of the first singles bars in the United States. This would be a bar that would ultimately grow into an international franchise known as TGI Fridays. Stillman told Cron of the original TGI Fridays location in New York City, the neighborhood was full of singles. Lots of stewardesses, pilots, actors and actresses, and I was single at the time. As he explained further in an interview in Edible Geography, this group of unattached young people represented, to his mind, a thoroughly untapped market. Stillman told the outlet, before TGI Fridays, 4 single 25-year-old girls were not going out on Friday nights, in public and with each other, to have a good time. There simply weren't all that many venues for this kind of fraternizing, at least not outside of house parties or upscale restaurants where you'd be more likely to impress a date one-on-one. Stillman's successful experience with TGI Fridays after its first 1965 opening, and the singles bar concept in general, encouraged him to continue his business ventures. And so, 12 years after his first grand opening, the inaugural Smith & Wollensky opened in Midtown Manhattan. When Smith & Wollensky opened in 1977, the reception was chilly, to say the least. The New York Times was particularly rough, calling the restaurant's appetizers disappointing, its bread especially poor, and the overall atmosphere of the space downright dreary. The negative New York Times review nearly sank the restaurant, but it was Stillman's savvy marketing skills that saved it from utter culinary doom. Shortly after the review was released and business plummeted, Stillman bought 2 full-page ads in the New York Times to garner more visibility and support for the fledgling steakhouse. He told CBS News,
The following week, we started doing business in double and more than double every day.
the meat you'll find at Smith & Wollensky isn't exactly that of your average steakhouse quality stuff. Indeed, this restaurant prides itself on the quality of its meat, which is carefully prepared by butchers who work specifically for the company. As part of that effort, the steak is dry-aged, a process that entails locking the meat in a sealed refrigerator kept at about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. The meat gets cured in this way over the course of about 4 weeks, resulting in the delicious flavor and tender texture of a classic Smith & Wollensky steak. Because of the massive size of the restaurant and its constant revolving door of customers, the fridge stays reliably full too. A single Smith & Wollensky location may be curing anywhere from 7 to 12 tons of meat at a time. According to the restaurant's website, their dry aging process is pretty darn time-consuming and expensive, but it yields a product so delicious that the owners, butchers, and customers all agree that it's well worth the wait. Smith & Wollensky has been serving world-famous steaks and cocktails in New York City and beyond for over 40 years now. The concept is altogether fairly simple, straightforward, and a little bit old school. Given the continued success of that model, it looks as if the restaurant's owners don't have plans to change that anytime soon. Suggesting anything to the contrary would be met with resistance. In a 2017 interview with Haute Living, Stillman rejected the idea that Smith & Wollensky had transformed over the years, telling the outlet, "There have been more decorative placards added over the years, more awards on the wall, and some menu items have been updated a bit, but we're still pretty much the same." Consider that, just like when it originally opened in 1977, Smith & Wollensky still has an in-house butcher who manages the estimated 3 tons of beef that each restaurant receives each month. The servers, a traditionally itinerant bunch that are likely to peruse other restaurants' job boards, often stick around at Smith & Wollensky for years. In fact, many of them average about 20 years at Smith & Wollensky. Warren Buffett, the incredibly rich American business mogul and investor, is reportedly a regular at Smith & Wollensky when he's not chowing down on fast food. According to Insider, when Buffett is in New York City, Smith & Wollensky is oftentimes his first and most essential stop. He's such a fan that one of Buffett's philanthropic efforts includes an auction where winners will enjoy a dinner with Buffett at Smith & Wollensky. Bidders pay upwards of $2.7 million to dine one-on-one with the famous businessman at his favorite Manhattan steakhouse, while the money goes to various charitable organizations. According to former winners, Buffett's regular order at Smith & Wollensky is actually pretty simple. It consists only of a medium-rare steak with hash browns and a cherry coke, reported the 2007 auction winner. Allegedly, his preferred cut of meat is a sirloin. And in matters of dessert, if nothing else, Buffett is a bit of a socialist. That is, reports indicate that he's willing to share in everyone else's treat. Apparently, he asks the waiter for extra spoons so as to have a bite of everyone else's dessert. 2007 brought quite a few big changes for this renowned New York-based steakhouse, including a major handover. For $79.5 million, a Los Angeles restaurant group called Patina brought Smith & Wollensky from its original founder, Alan Stillman, according to the Los Angeles Times. The Patina Group, run by chef Joaquim Splichal, owns several of Los Angeles' most famous restaurants, as well as a few restaurants in New York, New Jersey, Las Vegas, and Northern California. Stillman, who agreed to the sale after his restaurant experienced a drop in sales after it went public, received some assets from the sale. Most notably, he was able to retain the New York Smith & Wollensky locations. Initially, Smith & Wollensky was a local New York City restaurant only. To that end, some of Stillman's partners were hesitant to expand to other cities. But after Stillman bought out the other owners, he was free to grow the company beyond the Big Apple. The second Smith & Wollensky location opened 20 years after the first, all the south in Miami, Florida. Stillman told Edible Geography that he looked at other cities but ultimately chose Miami because the property was the best option and the right piece of real estate had opened up. But despite his expansionist drive, Stillman isn't interested in opening locations in smaller cities that can't support a fancy steakhouse. Stillman told Edible Geography, "Smith & Wollensky is definitely an urban restaurant. These are big restaurants doing big dollars, and we have to be in big cities. The restaurants themselves are also big, considering that most of them can seat up to 700 people. Currently, Smith & Wollensky has locations in 9 different cities, from Columbus, Ohio to Taipei, Taiwan." Most of the Smith & Wollensky locations were acquired by the Danu Partners Restaurant Group in 2016, according to Nation's Restaurant News. This Irish-based investment group founded Setanta Sports Group, a sports television operator, and has acquired several other restaurant groups since their beginnings in 1992. Leonard Ryan, a principal of Danu, said in a statement published in Nation's Restaurant News, "Danu's partners have been huge admirers of this iconic brand for decades, having hosted a great number of business dinners cutting into S&W steak." The restaurant group hopes to continue to expand Smith & Wollensky beyond the US. For now, though, Alan Stillman remains at the helm of the original Smith & Wollensky in New York. While Danu may own the rest of the locations, it is Stillman's hand that steers what may be arguably the most important one. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.